the strings themselves are easier to reach whenever you go up and down the fretboard like this.
Do you find a 9.5-inch radius neck easier to play than a 12-inch radius neck?
That's a great question. So there's something we haven't talked about yet, which is the radius of the fretboard. What that means is how curved is the fretboard. And again, that's something that most people, unless you start getting really into guitar, most people don't even know that that's a thing. They think the fretboard is flat, and it's absolutely not. If you pick up a classical guitar, most classical guitar fretboards are flat. A lot of modern ones have a little bit of a curve, but they're mostly flat. And this is I will give my general suggestions and then my preferences. So in general, the more curved the fretboard is, the more comfortable it's going to be to play chords. Why? Because if you relax your hand, your fingers are already curved. So it's just natural to press down something like this, right? The problem with that is, as soon as you want to start bending strings, because you're basically playing on like a barrel, your strings can, for lack of a better term, get buzzy. They can do what's called fretting out, which means the notes won't ring. And it's just frustrating. You can't really sound that great on it. And you might have to raise your action higher than you want. When you start to make your fretboard flatter, like instead of having such a radius like this, and you start to make it more flat like this, or even dead flat like this, a couple things happen. Number one, the strings themselves are easier to reach whenever you go up and down the fretboard like this. Why? Because it's just a little bit, but they're closer to your fingers on this side and on this side. It doesn't seem like it would make that much of a difference, but it makes a massive difference. Most like Les Pauls and Gibsons are like a 12-inch radius. Ibanez, to give you an example, is actually 15.75 inches for most people. They measure in millimeters. That's why it's different. Old vintage Fender guitars like Telecasters, Strats are 7.5. The modern ones are 9.5. The even more modern ones, they're moving to 12 because flatter is easier to play lead guitar. It's easier to bend because you can get a lower action. This guitar actually has a 20-inch radius, so it's very what people would call flat. Technically, it's not flat, but it doesn't have much of a curve to it at all. You probably can't see that, but it's very shallow curve. I actually prefer playing on a guitar with no radius at all. I prefer playing on a perfectly flat fretboard. And the reason is because once you get used to pressing the chords down, it's so much easier to hit the individual notes, and you can play a lot faster, and your action can be as low as possible, and you can bend wherever you want without ever having to deal with buzzing or fretting out. In my opinion, one of the greatest guitar players of all time, Sean Lane, his signature guitar, it's made by a company called Vigier, and it's called the Excalibur. Sean passed away a long time ago, but his guitar, if you go look at the specs, he has a perfectly flat fretboard. And I've never seen a production electric guitar from any player who has a perfectly flat fretboard. But Sean used to play classical, and he's an amazing piano player, etc. So it just depends on what you want to do. Different specs will unlock different styles of playing.
Hey there, and thanks for watching that video. That's just one of our shorter clips from the longer Q&A sessions we do a ton here at Breakthrough Guitar. And if you're interested in seeing those and seeing everything that we have here, I highly recommend you click the button right there and subscribe. Also, speaking of the other videos we do, feel free to click right over there to start digging into those and advancing your guitar playing. We look forward to it, and we will see you next time.